What is going on, YouTube? Back here with another video. Today we are going to be diving in, giving a reaction to the NFL free agency of day 1 and 2. Things are going wild. We've got Sam Darnold to the Seahawks, Geno headed to the Raiders, we've got DK headed to Pittsburgh, and we've got the Patriots overpaying a hell of a lot of players. We're going to dive into it, but before we start, please hit that like, hit that subscribe button, and hit that noti bell so you know when I'm dropping my newest videos. Thank you guys for watching. Let's get into it. Dun, 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 dun. When I'm in town, party's going down, shoot it down. With a 50 round, run to town. Ballin' hard, you out of bounds. Yeah. So much money, damn it, I forgot to count. Yeah. Look at the bank account. We're back with another video. Like I said, we're getting into some of the NFL free agency. I want to hit on some of the biggest moves, kind of give my thoughts and opinions on what these moves mean for the now, but not only the future, some of the contracts and massive amounts of money that was given out. So let's get into it. We're going to start off with what I had at the top of that list, which is maybe the biggest move of this offseason so far. I mean, there was a lot of stipulation around some of the bigger defensive players getting traded, Max Crosby, Myles Garrett. Those didn't end up happening. Those guys signed for over $100 million and are happy where they are. But we've got Sam Darnold going to Seattle. Now, this was a move that started to become more and more rumored as the offseason started to come up and this tampering period started to begin. Sam Darnold to Seattle gained a lot of steam, but they had Geno on a contract. It was looking like maybe they could run it back with the same core. If anything, they find somebody in the draft, let him play behind Geno, have Geno on not a team-friendly deal, but team-friendly in comparison to the top-paid quarterbacks, the Dak Prescott's, $60 million a year pretty much. But Geno was looking for somewhere between $40 to $50 million a year. Has he warranted that? One playoff appearance, I believe, in his career. You can say what you want about whether he deserves the money and whether he's going to deserve it in Vegas, but they got Sam Darnold, 3 years, $100 million, 55 guaranteed. So only a little over half is guaranteed of his contract. This move to me is a bit confusing because when it came out that Seattle was going to be trading DK Metcalf, and then they jumped on it straight away, got rid of Geno Smith. They're like, here you go, Vegas, 3rd round pick, take him. He's off our hands. And then, word came out that their asking price for DK Metcalf started lowering. And, you hear a lot of things. They were asking for a 1st and 3rd originally is what was being rumored. And then he ended up getting traded for a 2nd round pick. We're going to get more into DK later, but that was kind of a sign that they were heading in a different direction with the team. They weren't maybe necessarily looking to win now. And last season, maybe they had just had enough of what this core of Geno Smith leading this team with DK Metcalf as his number 1 receiver had to offer. And they traded DK to Pittsburgh. They signed Sam Darnold now. Sorry. My apologies. They signed Sam Darnold for $100 million, and it's looking like he is now their quarterback of the future. Sam Darnold had a very great season last year for about 15 games, and then the last 2 games of the season, it's like, where was that guy we saw the first 15 weeks? He did have a struggling game against Jacksonville. I remember, I think I put a parlay down on Justin Jefferson. Did not hit because Sam Darnold had like 100 passing yards. The whole Vikings offense just shit the bed in general. But that's besides the point. Sam Darnold, we only have 15 games of seeing whether this guy is a real legit quarterback, so I can't give an expert opinion on whether I think he's going to succeed, especially right away. I think he has talent. He has a strong arm. He made a lot of plays last year. He is a gunslinger in the same way Geno is, so he's going to throw some picks that you're just face palming while watching on TV, screaming at your quarterback. But overall, I don't hate this move. I think that Seattle, they get younger with this move. Geno, 34 years old, going to be 35 soon, was demanding $40 to $15 million annually, as I discussed. And they get Sam Darnold for around a little bit less than that. They're paying him around $35 million a year, which a lot of money to any one of us. But in NFL terms, he's not getting paid that top quarterback dollar, so they bring a guy in who's 27, going to be 28 years old, and they're looking to pair him up with some of this younger core. They're trying to kind of fit the timeline with a different quarterback now, and this shows that, There was a lot of rumors going before, and they could still do it, but it's very unlikely of them maybe going into the draft and getting a guy like a Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, looking into one of those younger quarterbacks to develop over the next few years. That's not looking like it anymore. They have JSN. The receiver room is still very questionable, so if Seahawks fans got a question on their team right now, it is that receiver core. You got a budding star in Jackson Smith and Jigba, but outside of that, Jake Bobo's got hands, but he ran a slower 40 than Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy. So he's not the most electric receiver on the field. But I want to go to the other side of this trade while we're talking about these two teams in general, that being the Seahawks and the Raiders. Geno Smith is headed to Vegas. And as soon as I found this out, I get the notification on my phone. Underdog Fantasy, for some reason, just has the fastest notifications you will ever find. And I get notified. Geno Smith has been traded to the Raiders. First thing I do, call up my dad. Biggest Raiders fan I am. I'm like, Dad, what are you up to? Just so I can prepare for the moment. If he's sitting there by himself, is he going to break down? Am I going to need to comfort him in this moment? Has he had maybe a little bit to drink, so he's going to be fired up? I had to prepare myself mentally. So I asked him what he's doing. I think he said he was on his way home, or maybe he had just gotten off work. So I'm like, Dad, the Raiders traded for Geno Smith. They traded a third-round pick. This led to about a 25, 30-minute conversation of him hating the move entirely. And, I just let him spew it out. I let him just release all of that anger and hatred that he has towards the Las Vegas Raiders franchise. He's been a fan of the Raiders much longer than I have, but he knows what it's like to be through crappy quarterback situations, crappy teams, shitty defense, just being a terrible organization in general. And he sees a guy like Geno Smith come in who just came off maybe his worst year he's had, not even maybe, his worst year he's had since becoming a suitable starting quarterback in that top 15 quarterback range. And he sees them bringing him in. He's in need of a new contract. He's talking about getting $40-50 million. It can scare a fan. And I took a day or so to think about the move in general, and I don't mind it for the reason that with bringing Pete Carroll in, having the new GM and John Spytek, this team is looking to win now, whether that means winning 8 games and missing the playoffs, but kind of being in that tight division race, or making the playoffs and barely getting in there and being a first-round exit. They don't care. They just want to win football games. They are done winning 4, 3, 5, 6, being in the top 10 pick range. They're trying to move the culture away from that. So I can understand why they make this move. They're going to sign Geno to probably what's likely going to be a 2-3 year extension. That last year, the extension is probably going to just be if they cut him, then it won't hurt the team type of deal. But overall, I like the move. They have Brock Bowers still, so they do have some weapons. Jacoby Myers, solid slot guy. He's not a number 1 receiver. Neither is Trey Tucker by all means. But I'm hoping in this draft, now that they bring in a Geno Smith, it's clear that they're not going quarterback at 6. They add maybe a weapon on the outside in the first, second, third round, get an impact player out there. There's a few guys I like in the draft that they could go get, and I'm really excited to see what they do in the offseason. They need to upgrade the front 7 on both sides of the ball, or front 5, I should say, D-line and O-line. They need to upgrade it. So we'll see what direction the Raiders do end up taking in the offseason. I don't hate the move. They gave up a third-round pick. It is a higher third-round pick because they were a bad team, so it's like a late second. But I don't hate the move. You're trying to get competitive now. Getting Geno Smith in the quarterback room is going to help you be more competitive. Our next move, we've got Justin Fields going to New York. Now, this move, I saw it today, and I didn't really think too much of it just because I don't really think Justin Fields is that good of a quarterback. Say what you want about the guy. Fantasy owners are going to love him. He puts up rushing yards, but he is not a great pocket passer. They get younger with this move as they're going from a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers to a 25-year-old, whatever his age is, Justin Fields. And they get him on a pretty good contract. 2 years, $40 million, so they're only paying him $20 million a year. And that's lower than what the average market is for his level of quarterback. It's $5 million more a year than Gardner Minshew, so you could say it's a steal of a deal. I don't mind it. This team gets younger. They're trying to move in a new direction, as a lot of other teams are this offseason. And they get him for $40 million. We'll see how he ends up. It really just depends on whether they can develop him as a passer. We know what type of runner he is. But guys like Garrett Wilson, we saw what it did to DJ Moore. He liked Justin Fields. I mean, he was clearly hurt when Caleb Williams entered the quarterback room. He was not feeling it at all. I remember when Justin Fields got traded, he was just like, why did we get rid of him? I like this guy. So maybe, Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson, college teammates, so they've already got some sort of connection, but Justin Fields definitely hasn't been the same type of elite player in comparison to his competitors in the NFL that he was in college. But, this could be a good move. I don't hate it. They also signed the Jets, also signed Jermaine Sherwood. Most of you don't probably know who that is. Middle linebacker. He had a standout year. They signed him 3 years, $42 million, $30 million guaranteed, so around $10 million a year. I like that deal. He was a standout player for their defense. And Eric Glenn's trying to bring in some new guys. He's trying to also reinvigorate that culture like the Raiders are doing, like the Seahawks are doing. Teams are really trying to push the pedal, get the old out and in with the new. I'm pretty sure that they lost Morgan Moses. Maybe they didn't. They might have re-signed him. But they're trying to move in with some new guys. And honestly, I don't hate it. If I had to give them a ranking, it'd be like A, B minus, maybe a C plus. It was just okay. So we were just talking about Justin Fields, but I want to stay where he was drafted originally. We're going back to the NFC North, and we're going to talk Chicago Bears. Chicago decided, hey, we brought in Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson decided we need to upgrade this O-line. Did we not see how many times our rookie quarterback got sacked last year? Do we not see the implications it had on our offense in general and the running game, passing game, everything game? The Bears added Joe Thuney, they added Jonah Jackson, and they added Drew Dahlman. Drew Dahlman signed for 3 years, $42 million. I'm not very familiar with the guy. I wasn't watching many Atlanta center highlights. I wasn't paying attention. But what I do know is Joe Thuney, multiple-time Super Bowl champion. I believe he's a 4-time Super Bowl champ. He can move anywhere on the O-line. Jonah Jackson, also a very versatile offensive lineman. He moved a few teams now since the start of his career. He started in Detroit, I believe, moved to LA Rams, and now he's in Chicago. So they bring in 3 new starters. Darnell Wright, still a work in progress. They drafted him with a top 10 pick, I believe. Braxton Jones on the other side is a solid player. So now they really have a foundation for the O-line to protect their star quarterback. And I was listening to somebody talk about just having a good interior O-line with a shorter quarterback and how it can help. Because a lot of the times, these shorter quarterbacks will have to step up into the pocket, and in order to have good protection while stepping up, you need a strong interior O-line. So doing this for Caleb, I'm really excited to see what the Bears have to offer this year. They brought in a bunch of new talent. They've got some great defensive players. Still got Jalen Johnson. Rome Odunze, if they don't bring back Keenan Allen, should be slotted into a much bigger role. I'm just really curious to see how Caleb improves in year 2, what type of changes he makes with Ben Johnson now calling the plays. And Chicago's going to be a team to watch out, even though they've been poverty for like my entire lifetime outside of having that crazy defense with Brian Urlacher and Peanut Tillman and all them. But I love the moves they made. If I had to give it a ranking, I'd give it an A minus, B plus. They upgraded the O-line. Everyone knew they needed to do it. They did it. We're going to move into DK Metcalf. I want to talk a little bit about what this move means for the Steelers, what it means for him. What it means for him is he is now worth over $150 million. If you do not know, DK Metcalf signed a 4-year, $142 million deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was traded there for a second-round pick. So Seattle is now, I believe, 11 picks in this year's draft. They've completely loaded up on draft picks for this year. They're kind of looking to revamp their roster, as we know, as we just talked about. But the Steelers, this is a bit of a confusing move for me. I listened to a podcaster who is a Steelers fan, and he was not a fan of the move because for the right reasons, you should not be making this move unless you have a quarterback that's going to be able to benefit having this type of weapon on the outside. You got a guy like George Pickens who didn't have the greatest year last year in terms of what people expected from him, but he's a solid young guy. Now you bring in a DK Metcalf and you're paying him 25, around 30 mil a year, and we don't even know who's throwing him the football. Is it going to be Russell Wilson? Is it going to be Aaron Rodgers? Are you going to draft somebody? This is a move you make when it's like the final piece. Like, this is what we need. You know, we've got the defense. We've got the O-line. We've got a solid run game. You know, maybe you even got a tight end. Then you go and trade for a DK Metcalf. You make that move to help out the quarterback. They don't even have a quarterback, and they're paying DK Metcalf quarterback money. So overall, it's a very confusing move. It's an upgrade in talent. They also brought in Darius Slay for a 1-year deal. He's a bit older. He's a veteran player. He's going to be able to help mentor Joey Porter Jr., who is a true cornerback 1 in this league. If I had to grade this move, I'd give it a... Man, he's a great player, so I want to give it a decent grade. But it's really just a confusing move with where their roster's at. They have a competitive roster, don't get me wrong, but they don't have a quarterback. They're not in a position to compete because they haven't figured out the most important position of them all. So, I don't believe this is where DK wanted to go. I believe it's where Seattle found their best option at trading him away. And now he's stuck in a spot that doesn't have a quarterback and nobody who's going to be able to throw to him. We'll see how the dynamic between him and George Pickens works out. They're two of the biggest crash outs in the league, as we know. Overall, C-, D+. Not a great move. Moving on, we're going to break into Laramie Tunsil, the All-Pro, I believe, once or twice, maybe a few times. He's a Pro Bowl level left tackle for the Houston Texans. He's been traded to the Commies, and Commies, I mean Washington Commanders, for a boatload of picks. Not really a boatload, 4, but a 2025 3rd and 7th and a 2026 2nd and 4th. I like this move for both sides. I honestly think both sides get a good end of this deal. Texans are moving off of him because he is in the last year of his deal. He doesn't really have any guaranteed money left. And what happens when you have a star player who only has 1 year left on their deal? They want to be extended. They want the money they're worth. They want to have that guaranteed money so that if they go out there and snap their entire leg and can't ever play again, at least they're making some money. So going out there and you have no more guaranteed money left on your contract is a total risk. And I can understand why you would want to put yourself in a position to get a contract. So he was probably talking to the front office, hey, we're going into this next season. I'm our best lineman. What are we thinking about throwing me a little dough? What are we thinking about throwing me a little cash? And they're probably like, well, how much are we thinking? And he's like, top 3 paid tackle maybe. And they're like, okay, let's talk next week. And by next week, he was traded. So Washington gets a hell of a left tackle. They needed some pieces up front, especially for Jaden Daniels. They're really starting to buy in. They traded for Deebo Samuel. He had a little bit left on his contract. I don't know if it was just another year and he's going to kind of be a rental, but Laramie Tunsil is definitely a long-term piece. He's a great player. He can hold and get a few penalties here and there, but he has been a staple of whatever team he goes to. He was great in Miami. He was great in Houston, and I believe he's going to be the same in Washington. They once had Trent Williams. Now they got another staple left tackle in Laramie Tunsil. I like the move. B+ for both sides, I'd say. Houston, you get a pick that you can use this year, draft your replacement, and Washington, you get a Pro Bowl, All-Pro level left tackle. Love the move for both. Now I want to talk about a team who made a lot of confusing moves. They're a team that had a lot of high expectations coming into this free agency and this offseason in general, and that is the Patriots. They spent a lot of money. They signed Milton Williams, who former Eagle, go Birds. They signed him for, $104 million. And 51 of it is guaranteed, so, there's a lot of bonuses that go into it. He's guaranteed $51 million. But $100 million for a guy who was the 3rd defensive tackle on his last team. I love the guy. He just brings tenacity. He's a hard-nosed football player. He's great. He's a great player. The Eagles would have loved to have him back, I'm sure. But not for $104 million. He was just our defensive tackle 3. It's a confusing move. The Patriots needed to go out there and spend cash. They knew that. They were a team that everyone was expecting to maybe go out and get a star receiver to pair up with Drake May. Instead, they bring back Austin Hooper. They signed shoeless Mac Hollins. If you don't know about it, look it up. And I believe they signed Harold Landry, Mike Vrabel, The Connection, Tennessee. They signed him to, I don't know the numbers, but a relatively solid deal. But this one was a complete reach to me. They also brought in Carlton Davis, a bit older, struggled with injuries the past few years, but he's solid. You pair him next to Christian Gonzalez, Marcus Jones. I really like him. He's one of the more electric players, underrated players in the league. If you don't know him, look him up. Marcus Jones. But they have a solid DB core with, I don't know if they let go of Jabril Peppers or what his situation is. They have Kyle Duggar, I believe, still, and now they're bringing another veteran guy to pair on the outside. Their defense is really coming together. With Mike Vrabel coming in, I'm not surprised that they've decided to, start to revamp this defense, but they make a move. They're just trying to get guys in. We'll see how this contract ends up panning out because they have Christian Barmore also on the defensive line. He's more of a 3-4 end, so he's not your big nose tackle guy. But they bring in Milton Williams to also play a rush end on in a 3-4 scheme. We'll see how that ends up panning out. Probably not for the best speaking. His cap hits over $30 million in the last 2 years, so he's going to be owed a lot of money in the near future. All right, and last up on our agenda for the day, let me just go ahead and close the door. I can hear the dryer. Is we're going to talk about former and current Niners players. A lot has gone on in San Francisco and leaving San Francisco. They lost. Let's just name some of the notable players, shall we? So they lose Aaron Banks to Green Bay. By the way, massive overpay, $72 million for a guard who's just flat out mid. They lose Charvarius Ward. He had a tragic situation this last season. If you don't know about it, look it up. I don't feel like bringing it up. He's going to Indy. They lose Hufanga and Greenlaw to Denver. You know, Hufanga had a down season, but he was coming off a major injury. I believe it was either Achilles or ACL or MCL. It was a major tendon injury. He, worth some money. Great player. Greenlaw also coming off major injury towards Achilles in the Super Bowl when they were last there against the Chiefs. Came back last season later in the year. Didn't necessarily look like the same player, but we know what type of player Dre Greenlaw can be. So they lose him. They lose their backup tackle, Jalen Moore, to the Chiefs. He also overpay. What are we doing paying a left tackle who's a backup $15 million a year? Come on, Kansas City. Thought we're smarter than this. They also lose Elijah Mitchell to Kansas City, and they lose Leonard Floyd because they cut him to sign Joey Bosa, and then they miss out on Joey Bosa, and he signs with the Bills. The 49ers are in shambles. This offseason hasn't gone great. I can't remember, but I believe Brock Purdy hasn't been extended yet. We're still going to see what that number ends up. Sorry, I got a text message in my brain. But the Niners, they're in shambles this offseason. We're really going to have to see them have a really productive draft. I'm curious to see what they go with at 11. Are they just going to say, screw it, we're going skill position again? Maybe they go corner in the first round. I could see it. Or are they really just going to be like, all right, we know we've abandoned the O-line since Kyle Shanahan's got here outside of getting Trent Williams, but let's invest. So we'll see what they end up doing. I love the Broncos bringing in the two Niners guys, Greenlaw and Hufanga. They're two dynamic defensive players who can fly around the field. The Broncos defense is really becoming legit as they had Patrick Surtain, Defensive Player of the Year. They have Nick Bonito, who's a dynamic edge rusher and just made a ton of different plays last season. The Broncos are starting to look up. They let Javonte Williams go, which, he had some, at least what I thought, some potential, but then the past few years he just kind of phased out of the league, just hasn't been that great. So I love what the Broncos are doing. The Niners lost a hell of a lot of guys, so we're going to see how they replace that in the draft and throughout free agency. I honestly think that the Bosa situation is comical. What came out was that they cut Leonard Floyd, who was their other edge rusher outside of Bosa, so they can make room for Nick Bosa's brother, Joey Bosa. And then he was like, then the Bills were like, hey, here's $13 million. I don't know what they're offering you, but there's 13. And he was like, I'm on the way to Buffalo. So they lost out on a potential edge rusher, Joey Bosa. He's not what he once was, but he is still a very solid, talented veteran player coming off the edge who the Niners definitely could have used now that they got rid of their other pass rusher. So we'll see what they end up doing with him and who they end up signing. This is my reaction for free agency so far. I've really loved what we've already got. I love the offseason in every sport, but NFL offseason has a different feel to it. Thank you guys for tuning in. I had fun today. I hope you guys did too. Hit that like button. Love y'all, boys. Peace.